Welcome once again to My 11th Circle presents Cricbuzz Live, and today we are going to talk about emotion. I know we've talked about emotion in Kolkata, a city that grows emotion on trees almost. I know we've talked about Chennai and that tremendous comeback in 18 to win it, almost winning it in 19, all that goes around that side. But tell me, is there more emotion than there is with Bengaluru? What fans? Every year they turn up and say, this year Cup Number Day, and they get disappointed. And they come back and say, this year Cup Number Day. Hats off. Amazing fans for Bengaluru. Can you be optimistic this year? I think for two reasons. One at the top of the order and one in the middle order, and try to plug the big problem which has been death overs bowling. But let's start with the two central figures. AB de Villiers, Virat Kohli. Virat Kohli, AB de Villiers, what fusion, what music when they are playing together. But are Virat and AB the two pillars that are holding up this edifice and protecting against everything that comes against rain and wind and sun? Or are they two giant trees in whose shadow nothing is growing? Are people looking and saying, oh wow Virat, oh wow AB? If this year the cup has to be theirs, then all those saplings in the shade have to grow out and say, we are trees in our own right. And so that brings us to the two key overseas purchases that have to fire for them. One is Aaron Finch, extraordinary international player, but strangely not a record in this tournament to talk about. And why is that the case? Can this be the breakout year for Finch in the tournament? And if it is, it takes so much pressure off AB and Virat if they keep getting great starts. One other issue that Bengaluru have to look squarely in the eye, their record against the top four franchises over the years is very ordinary, and they start very slow. You can't keep losing matches in the first six and then put pressure on yourself to come back. In the last 6 seasons, you look at the first 6-7 games, they are 113, lost 28. That's too much of a pressure to come back from. So if Bengaluru can get off to a great start, maybe win 2 or 3 out of their first 4 games, then we're looking at a different scenario. Who does he start with? I think they want to play Devdutt Padikkal. But if they have to play Padikkal, then who keeps wickets? Because they've got Parthiv Patel at the top. He plays in the power play, but if you want to play Padikkal, there's no room for Parthiv. And if there's no room for Parthiv, the two keeping options are Josh Philippe and AB de Villiers. If Philippe plays, it takes away a lot of degrees of freedom from the bowling because you're already playing Finch. Can he play for Finch? Maybe not early in the tournament. And so can AB keep wickets. He's done it in Australia. He's done it at various times in the past. But will his back, not the youngest back in the world, sustain 14 games? If he can, it just adds to the degrees of freedom. But otherwise, Padikkal to open the batting, AB to keep wickets, otherwise Parthiv for Padikkal. Then what happens? Right after these two, you don't want to go that far, but I think these four have to take the batting deep, and then they've got to ask themselves whether Dubey, Gurkirath, Washington. If Dubey, Gurkirath, Washington can provide them a solid base, then they can play two overseas bowlers. Or they back Chris Morris to bat at 6, and what a role he has to play. Chris Morris has to be the finisher, which has been a slight issue, but also he has to bowl in the death, which has been the biggest issue. And that is why they'd want 2 overseas bowlers, because Yadav bowls out. Can they back Saini to bowl regularly at the death, or do they want an overseas player? How good is Steyn going to be? We don't know, but I think there's a dark horse there. As the wickets start to get slower, a left-hander who takes the pace of the ball, tongs at number 8 very effectively. I think it could be an inspired purchase. I'm talking about Isuru Udana. And that's why only 2 overseas batsmen. You can play a combination of Morris, Udana, Steyn. But do you also want to play Moeen Ali? If you back Dubey at 5, then you don't need to play Moeen Ali. Still 2 spinners there. Washington Sundar, Yuzvendra Chahal. Sundar has to have a big tournament. There's too much ability there. A disappointing tournament last year. Can he bat about 6, 7, 8, play those big shots at the end that he's capable of? And then they can still play maybe a Pawan Negi. If they don't trust 5 and 6, and you want to play Moeen Ali to be that finisher along with Chris Morris, then you only have room for 1 overseas player, and then you have 2 off spinners and a leggy all, well, as your spin bowling option. It's still not a bad option there either. How do they address the big issues that they've had? Power play bowling. Umesh Yadav has been good in the past. Washington Sundar had just tapered off as a power play bowler. If they can address that, that'll be a big factor. But at the death, they bowl out Yadav. Can they have Morris as the key there? Morris tends to be expensive, but he's still a pretty safe bet at the end. That is why I think they'll want to play Dubey at 5 and have the option of 2 overseas bowlers bowling at the death with a combination of either Yadav or Saini. I think it's a team that, if it believes in itself, it's certainly got the players to win. We say that every year, but I think the presence of Finch, Morris and my dark horse Isuru Dana could make it a better opportunity this year for the cup being number there.